So see you all after the tea break. Thank you. We have thinned out considerably, but meanwhile, I'll request you all to please kindly take your seats. It has already gone twice, thrice. Welcome to the post-tea session of day 3 of DevSat 2023. Once again, before we start, please do remember to either switch off your cell phones or put them on silent mode. This session is entitled Closing Capability Gaps and Retaining the High Ground by Integrating Drones, HAPS and Satellites. So we are all set to start the session. I'll request you all please kindly take your seats. The esteemed chair and moderator for this session is Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, PVSM, AVSM, VSM retired, former Deputy Chief, Indian Integrated Defence Staff Operations, and Chair of the Aerospace and Defence Committee at SIA-India. As you can see, the esteemed chair is already here in our midst. I'll request you all once again to please kindly be seated. So with the permission of the esteemed chair, we are ready to start the session. The esteemed speakers for this session are as follows: Lieutenant General Dr. V.K. Saxena, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, retired, formerly Director General of the Corps of Army Air Defense; Air Marshal G.S. Bedi, AVSM, VM, VSM, retired, former DGIS; Mr. Tobby Simon, founder and president, Synergia Foundation; Mr. Naveen Navlani, Associate Director, Global Military Sales, Idea Forge Technology Private Limited; Mr. Jayant Sinha, Program Manager, L Componix Aerob Technologies India Private Limited. I'll request them all to please join us on stage. Since our audience is really thinned down, I'll request the people who are absolutely at the back, if you could come up at the front a little, please. There's plenty of room here. Ma'am, why don't you join us up front? So a very warm welcome to the esteemed chair and the esteemed panelists of this session. With that, I hand it over to you, sir, to take the session forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is, I think, the culmination, and therefore we are talking about not the ordinary stuff that we've spoken about in space, which is generally known. We kept the surprise for the end, because those who have stayed that long must take something away which is special, not discussed anywhere else before in the space community. I'll just give you a little background on why the subject came up on near space. Near space is something that we introduced with Air Marshal G.S. Bedi being here with me as our lead speakers in certain way that we started talking about the near space in the India Space Congress, which we did last year. And at that time, a lot of things had not happened in the world. It is only after we started speaking about the near Earth, near space, a lot of things started unfolding. They came into the news. And today, we have reached a place where we are sitting here with concerns with the technology is actually required to fill in certain voids, and certain possibilities of technology would build businesses around this. Also, what space cannot do and what air cannot do, or what space can do and air can do. So both can get covered in the near space as a subject. Having said that, there is another very important thing which has happened is that recently India has announced its space policy. Also very recently, though not very, very recently, the Indian Air Force has also taken out its doctrine called the Aerospace Doctrine. And very recently, ISRO has tested a reusable launcher in which they actually used the Chinook helicopter, and they made sure that the most critical part of the technology was tested as a technological demonstrator, and the perfect landing has been achieved. That was the most crucial part of the reusable launcher. So with these three things already there are possibilities of what can happen in the near space. The story of balloons has been going up now for some time, and the Chinese have rattled the Americans got rattled, they said they didn't know anything about it. It means that SSA was weak because the SSA was not aimed at the near space, nor was it aimed at the surveillance in the skies. So something happened that they missed the balloon, which has been actually doing surveillance of the US area of interest where the Chinese wanted, and I believe they have been there for quite some time. So all these incidents put together between last 6 months and now make what we had started in the India Space Congress being now a possibility, and now we have a panel in front of us and we will unfold the near space. Also, what has been happening in last couple of years is that we are talking about that our skies are no more safe. We purchased the air defense system. Now the air defense system came in, and then the hypersonic missiles became a threat. Then the Ukraine-Russian conflict started talking about the hypersonics and all. How is this that earlier, when we have invested heavily in the previous session, we were talking about the ballistic missile defense. We were talking about the Air Force being the senior partner in the air defense of skies. So we thought our third dimension was secure enough. So that is A2AD was something that we thought, we had more or less got hold of that, and so many squadrons here and so many radars in place and so many air defense systems and all. I'm not going to go into specifics because I'm going to leave that to the experts to deal with. So we are going to discuss the gambit of warfare in something which is future, and Tobby deals with the future. And once I've had the experts speak about it, then I'll come to you. Before I ask Lieutenant General Saxena to go into some special attributes of the security of the skies and the threat of the skies, I'm going to come back and ask first Air Marshal G.S. Bedi, what is near space? What is the significance of near space? What does the Air Force look at when they talk about the continuum of air and space? What kind of a continuum it is? And if there's something missing, what the aircraft cannot do and the satellites can do, or what the satellites can do and the aircraft cannot do, or both cannot do, or both can do. So let's talk about near space capabilities, and please describe for our audience what is near space and what is so special about the near space which is absent in the space and in the air domain. Let's have your views.
Thank you, sir. I just decided to speak from here because these mics work a little better than there. And thank you, sir. This is a very interesting domain. That what is this continuum? Up to when can, up to what place can aircraft operate, or if they can't go above, then what do we do above? So I'll just flash atmosphere slide here, just which will run in the background probably. So this is just a random, slide which just explains what is where. So generally you would know that aircraft stick themselves to about 20 kilometers, and satellites we all know are the closest in the LEO orbit. Now, if I was to, atmosphere has various properties, there is air density, there are various other composition. If I was to loosely just call it atmosphere as such, the atmosphere, the way we know it, closer to Earth, rather than calling it troposphere or stratosphere or in between, that moving from broad to narrow front, I would say that aircraft cannot fly above certain altitude or above, let's say, 15-20 kilometers, because there is not enough atmosphere there. And satellite cannot come there or below, certain altitude, because there is too much atmosphere there for satellite. Now, how this happens is, because aircraft or anything in the air now is sustaining itself because of any one of the two things, that is, either it produces lift, by aerodynamic forces which sustains it against the gravity, where lift is equal to weight, or it produces enough centrifugal force which balances the gravity, so it does not let it fall on the earth. Now we all know that aircraft flies by virtue of producing lift, by the reaction of aerodynamic forces over its wings which balance its weight, and satellite flies by producing enough centrifugal force by going around very fast, which is very balanced, depending on what altitude it is flying at, its speed is adjusted, so that its centrifugal force is just about balancing the gravity. Now, when you come to near space, what I mean to say is that it is space between, let's say, between 20 or 25 kilometers to 100 kilometers or below 100 kilometers. Now, why I say 25-30 kilometers? Because aircraft can show influence at least up to 25-30 kilometers if it has to launch a missile upwards from its maximum altitude. So, in this particular space, if the aircraft cannot produce enough lift, we will see why it can't do. Then it must cater the absence with some centrifugal force. Can it do that? Or if a satellite cannot produce enough centrifugal force at 80 kilometers or some other reason, then can it produce lift to sustain there? And we will see that probably both of them can't do that. And just to paraphrase a famous couplet, if this aircraft was to be talking to the satellite and they both want to come to near space, then probably it would tell her that near space में आने के दो ही तरीके हैं, एक हमें नहीं आता, एक तुम्हें नहीं आता. So one thing means I can't produce enough centrifugal force and you can't produce enough lift. Now why does aircraft can't, or why can't aircraft produce enough sustainment in above, let's say, 20 kilometers, let's call it 20 kilometers. Now aircraft sustains itself because of two things. One is the lift and second is the thrust. Both are important. Thrust makes it climb, that is excess of thrust, which is residual from after catering for drag. It makes it climb, and the lift is the aerodynamic forces that it produces by virtue of its reaction with the air around it. Now as you keep going higher and higher, that air keeps thinning down. Roughly at 40,000 feet, the air density is about 1/4. And by various formula, to produce the same aerodynamic force as the aircraft can produce at sea level, it has to fly twice as fast to produce the same kind of force at 40,000 feet. Now you keep raising this altitude, the drop in density may be exponential, and so finally it will run out of that amount of lift it can produce. And also, how does a jet engine produce thrust? It finally burns the air mass, the fuel burns the air mass. So as it keeps going higher and higher, that because the mass flow or the density keeps reducing, you find that it is not able to produce enough thrust to climb. So every aircraft has an absolute ceiling. That means at which the available thrust just about matches the drag, so it cannot really go above that. So then the option comes, what do? You probably go on to ramjet or scramjet or rocket engine. Rocket engine is an option. Now there is a Dawn Aerospace, this is a rocket powered space plane, it's Aurora Mark II. Now they are planning to take it up to 101 kilometers, in Mark III version, which will take off and land on the runway essentially, so they don't need any space kind of permissions to launch it. But what will it do? How much can it sustain at 100 kilometers is a different point. Now, this is why aircraft can't be there in near space, which I say 70-80 kilometers. Why can't satellite be there? Now, satellite, we all know that satellite has an orbital speed to produce centrifugal force. As the altitude keeps coming down, its orbital speed will have to increase just to draw to extremes. We all know Schuller period, of the Earth is about 84 minutes, implying that if orbital speed just close to surface of Earth will be such that it goes around the Earth in 84 minutes, translates to about 36,600 kilometers an hour, which is roughly 10 kilometers per second. As you keep going up, LEOs operate at about 7.8 kilometers a second, and a geostationary for that matter is time period is 24 hours, 3 kilometers a second. So what happens is when you keep coming down 80 kilometers, now not that you can't achieve that orbital speed, probably you can, but other phenomena start coming up like kinetic heating, which are missing at 500 kilometers. Now when the atmosphere starts appearing, when I said there is too much atmosphere for the satellite, now those kinetic heating problems have to start be sorted out. The temperature rise may be to the tune of 700, 8000 Kelvin. So how are we going to address that? And the more important aspect is, even if you manage to do that, since below 100 kilometers we call it as sovereign space, how is a satellite going to go around the Earth below 100 kilometer if every space over a country is its sovereign space? So I really cannot have a satellite flying at 80 kilometers orbiting the Earth because of sovereignty issues. And if that be so, then what do we do? Then when we come to closer at this place, then what is the alternative? Now the next alternative, what we, like General Pannu said, we talked of HAPS or balloons. In the last India Space Congress, this Chinese balloon was not yet on the horizon. And we had suggested to utilize balloon for an A to AD kind of environment, that is anti-access area denial and anti-access kind of scenario, wherein this balloon surveillance is a very old has been going on for a very long period. So we thought that this balloon probably could launch a missile as well, while it's up in the air. Now this technology is already maturing, and this is one Skydew missile detecting balloon, and this is one just picked up randomly from the net, that they are trying to use this century-old technology against Chinese hypersonic weapons, and it can also aid satellites. Now or picking up. Now this is just one aspect. Now, what happens is, we just heard yesterday the requirements of what I'm saying, why these balloons can be used for innovative uses also, beyond the ordinary. We heard yesterday Army presentations in which now they want 1 hour revisit of the satellite. Somebody said 10 to 12 minutes. Whether we have the capacity to absorb data, okay, let's assume we will have it, and let's say that hourly revisit is required. Probably what they want is hourly update on the scenario, not necessarily through satellite images, because they'll be very difficult and complex to process in that time frame. So if the objective is to have an hourly update, then surveillance through balloons. How? Now, I draw your attention to the Shahid kind of drones. Shahid are kamikaze drones. They say you launch, they, attack, destruct themselves. You're not recovering them back. Why can't I think of similar expendable surveillance drones? Let me have a small bat-sized drone. This balloon goes up, it launches 10, 50, 100. I'm not bothered about recovering them. Let them be over enemy area. They get shot, so be it. And they provide me intelligence, immediate battlefield intelligence, direct downlink. And probably after some time they destruct themselves, or even if they are lost, I wasn't planning to recover them anyway. So very small investment, very small kind of effort required in that, and they can come into collaborative role. We've been talking of MUMT, man unmanned teaming. Now as we talk of continuum, like you said, if there are going to be unmanned vehicles and these by technology they can be talking to each other, you can make a balloon and unmanned teaming and maybe call it BUMT or something. Now, why this is important, just last thing that somebody last presentation mentioned, that unless there is a commercial use of a technology, it is for the general good of the public and it does not serve some social purpose, then probably it will not take off, because I don't know how many balloons will military buy. So industry, if it has to invest in this balloons or in this kind of thing, then I would suggest that there is a lot of commercial potential in this. Space tourism is already existing. In India, people go for destination wedding to godforsaken places and spend crores. Imagine taking a couple up, for destination wedding and balloons, showing them curvature of the earth, and probably tell them that marriages are not only made in heaven, now they are being solemnized in heaven. And for the future generation, you can tell them probably it will last longer in case you get married closer to God. So there is a lot of commercial potential of this activity, and this will also lead to deception. Another thing, tomorrow if I have 100 balloons floating around, you don't know which is civil, which is military. So it is difficult to indiscriminately target any balloon by an adversary. He'll have to think twice. There are many more usages. Probably when we come to A2AD specific, we can talk more about it. But for now, I just wanted to say that why aircraft can't go there above 20 kilometers, why satellite can't come below 100 kilometers, and if they both can't be there, then what can be there? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Marshal Bedi. You actually come up with a very heavenly commercial idea. So I suppose this is going to be taken in by the industry. But you said about A2AD, and also we spoke about, the aircraft not climbing beyond an altitude and satellites cannot come down. So if a pilot has to become an astronaut, and there will be absence of both. So when there is absence of both, it obviously means it will be autonomous. Because it means there will be machines flying, but there will be no human being. Or maybe you have to make again a hybrid of a pilot, cosmonaut or astronaut. So I don't know how that will also work, but I think there's a huge amount of technology which has gone into automation. But you also spoke about the anti-access area denial. As I said, are we safe sitting here? Because we always feel that there will be somebody who's taking care of our air defense and no aircraft or no missile can come and hit us without being checked. But I think today, the situation has undergone a change. It is also worrisome. So therefore, huge amount of potential is there for the industry to look at how they can make our third dimension more secure. So there is a larger understanding which is required. So we have today amidst us Lieutenant General V.K. Saxena. He's doctor because he's done a research in the field. He will talk about it. And more important is that he was heading the Indian Army Air Defense. He was the Director General Air Defense. And he would throw light on the glide that we are talking about. It's possible to glide, but it is not possible to predict the glide. It is also not possible to deal with the speed at which the objects could be thrown at us. We spoke about in the earlier time that, there is a threat from the super and the hypersonic, missiles. But then hypersonic is a subject which we would need to understand more in the A2AD. And let's see how the space and the near space gets used, and how do we think that the commercial activity or business models will come out of it. May I request General Saxena to please give his presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, one and all. In this last session, I have stood here a number of last sessions and I know the fatigue which sets in. So it has to be something interesting to keep the eyes open. What I intend to cover in the next 15 minutes is, Air Marshal Bedi talked about the near space. I am going to talk about near space as well as the use of space in carrying out something which is otherwise unstoppable. I'm going to bring out a subject that hypersonic and space, their two are intimately connected, and there is a huge potential in building counter hypersonic capabilities through the medium of space. The professional body today is well past this debate as to why these hypersonic weapons are becoming a buzz today. Basically, the hypersonic weapon is any vehicle which travels at the speed greater than 5 Mach. Well, that may be the qualifying standard, but there are 3 combat virtues of the hypersonic weapons which I could quickly go through to tell you as to why these weapons are getting the tag of unstoppable, which is actually no more unstoppable really. First of all is the speed. As I said, the qualifying standard for a hypersonic weapon may be 5 Mach. But today there are missiles, like just now, Zircon missile was fired, the Kinzhal missile was fired, 8.6 Mach. The avant-garde hypersonic missile of Russia is 20 to 27 Mach. I'm talking of 32,000 to 33,000 kilometers per hour. That is the type of speed these vehicles are doing. And it is not a flight of fancy. They are sitting right across our border. And the threat is live and very much relevant today. And therefore, to build a counter to this threat, space can be a great domain to work on by the industry players who are sitting here. That is where the relevance of this subject and the relevance of what I am going to talk about. So having talked about the speed itself gives 4 or 5 different virtues. First of all, as the general just brought out, it beats the OODA loop, it beats the air defense basic loop of detection, interception and destruction, which requires a finite time to do. Also, in the case of hypersonic weapons, the speed is the new stealth, because the speed bestows upon the attacking threat vehicle a type of aura which is not conducive to detecting by the radars in the time frame which is there. Not only the time frame. The hypersonic vehicles are 2 types: hypersonic cruise missiles and glide vehicles. Cruise missiles, which are doing low in the atmosphere, below 100,000 feet. They are also not as innocent as the ballistic missiles, which give away their predictable impact point and the predictable journey in the outer space or in the above the atmosphere. They are all maneuverable vehicles, fully powered end to end, and therefore they become very difficult to detect. Firstly, the hypersonic cruise missiles remaining low, and hypersonic glide vehicles which are riding a booster, and thereafter the hypersonic phenomena takes place and they shoot off at speeds greater than 6, 7, 10, 20 Mach. They are flying the near space. The near space is 60 to 80 kilometers per hour, where is very difficult to be detected either way by the ground radars as well as the space-based sensors, the conventional sensors. That is where the near space is a playground for the hypersonic glide vehicles doing such speeds. And speed is not the only virtue, it is also the maneuverability. Because of being maneuverable and their unpredictability factor, they hold a huge swath of area as the threat signature and can change their target so effectively and so quickly that it gives the defender a large amount of resources to be deployed to tackle them. And the third combat virtue is altitude. Lower the altitude, the greater will be the difficulty by conventional radars to detect it. Also, by their smashing speed at which they go, they break the air molecules into positively charged particles and negatively charged particles called ions. They surround these vehicles in a plasma in a sheath which covers all around this vehicle and blocks the radio waves. So it makes it very difficult to connect with this vehicle and communication and connectivity, very difficult for radar waves to penetrate and detect them. And therefore this becomes a huge problem to detect a hypersonic vehicle. So a hypersonic cruise missile or a glide vehicle is difficult to detect, is difficult to counter in the time frame which it allows to do it. But is that unstoppability is the sign of invincibility? Not anymore. And therefore, I wish to tell you that the threats we face today from the China are very real. Their hypersonic race began sometime in 2013 to 15, and by 2018 the first vehicles were seen, both hypersonic cruise missiles as well as hypersonic glide vehicles. And you must have heard, must have read a news a few days back based on the intelligence papers leaked from the US that a DF-17 missile carrying a hypersonic glide vehicle did with a range of 5,000 to 8,000 km per hour is the capability successfully tested. So all these threats which is becoming real, how is it that we are going to counter this threat? Now this is the Zircon 2 Starry Sky 2 hypersonic aircraft or a cruise missile. DF-18, three types of missiles have been tested, 1S, 2S and 3S in the time of September 18 to November 2020. This is a missile based on a long-range rocket which encircled the South Pole and threatened the US assets from the unexpected direction. Also, it launched an air-to-air missile towards the end of its flight. This is the hypersonic missiles DF-27, which was leaked a few days back. It was there in the news of having tested successfully. And therefore, the point of countering and the point of space. First of all is the chance of detection. I talked to you that this is the biggest challenge where the space can be a salvation. What are the countries, front-ranking countries in the world doing about the detection of the hypersonic threat? They are launching a huge constellation of satellites in the space. Like for example, the US has already got 8 satellites in the orbit, which are missile warning satellites of the earlier class. That is earlier missile warning satellite which will detect is launch either by the plume or the boost phase or the mid-course phase. But it does not happen in the case of hypersonic missiles. And therefore what has happened? For detecting hypersonic missiles, 28 satellites have been placed in the threat domain by the US. It is called Trans 1. They are called very solid infrared OPIR detectors. This range is covered, this upper satellite layer is covered or duly connected with high altitude platform systems in near space or below near space to detect these missiles, and then they are connected to what Air Marshal Bedi was just talking about, a series of high altitude drones or distributed surveillance architecture starting from the drones to high altitude platform systems to the low Earth orbit satellites having infrared sensors. This provides them a global look-see capability. When I say global look-see, it does not mean end-to-end of the globe. It means global look-see capability in the likely threat domain, which is where our country needs to go. Since our threat is very real, yes, we are developing offensive capabilities. Not only ISRO has tested a HAWA vehicle, which is a hypersonic vehicle, the DRDO has sent 3 times the hypersonic technology demonstration vehicle, and I'm not going to go into that. Offense is the best form of defense. But sooner or later, the space scientist, the space industry, the space body has to look in the capability to detect a hypersonic threat in days to come. Countries today are struggling to develop this capability both on the satellite front as well as on the distributed architecture front. This is one set of the theory. The second issue is the kill challenge. The vehicles which are traveling at Mach 20 or Mach 18 or Mach 17 do not get killed by your ballistic missile defense or by your type of missiles, conventional missiles, which just cannot match them in time and space. What is required to kill them? What is required to kill them is directed energy weapons, which have been talked about by various speakers here. I was listening to the last one. Now, lasers have a great problem. Lasers are a boon. We are also, you are aware that in India there is a CHESS, CHESS, and there is also LASTEC, which is now merged. There are also a number of agencies. We have developed 25 kilowatt, we have 1000 kilowatt. We have Durga 2 weapon system, which is based on laser. But laser has its problem of range. Laser has its problem of adequate power requirement on board a weapon system to generate the killer beams of adequate strength. The next in the line is high power microwaves. High power microwave weapons which throw microwave energies, which accelerate electronic beams to such power which are equivalent to 1 million electron volt, which have power of 40 gigawatts, and pulses of nanosecond pulses have to be directed on these missiles in real time. Imagine what I am talking about. Imagine I am talking about somebody which is detecting these monsters which are traveling at Mach 20 in space through a distributed architecture. Then the message or the target information going to directed energy weapons in real time. The weapons firing their electronic weapons in real time and impinging on these vehicles to kill them. What sort of a challenge is that? It is a challenge of the future, but it is also a challenge which looks impossible today but will become possible tomorrow. And therefore the challenge is not only to have global look-see capability, not only to have the weapons in space. You must have read the news a few weeks back. China has developed a hypersonic HPM capability, high power microwave capability, in which 10 gigawatts of power is produced by a cupboard size of weapon, which can thereafter be tasked to accelerate electron beams to that high velocity. We have got also, you are aware of Kali 1, Kali 500, Kali 1000, Kali 2, that is kiloampere linear injector. But its weight is 10 tons. We have to go from where to where. Imagine whether the weapon will be ground based, will it be based on air, which will be based on near space, which will be based on satellite. What sort of a weapon, what sort of a kill challenge which we will got. And more than the kill challenge, who will battle manage the whole thing? Who will detect? Who will process this information? The leading nations of the world are not only putting the satellites for observation of hypersonic weapons, they are developing another range of satellites which is called the transport layer, which will in real time transfer this information to effectors. It is called effectors, weapon system, which will effect a kill on this system. So this is a domain for you to explore in the future. We neither have hypersonic weapon in the weapon grade. Today I was hearing in the morning in the Chanakya dialogue, the DRDO chief, he says our hypersonic weapons are somewhere there. We are not only weapon grade. You know, everything is fine. It's not there. But tomorrow, not only these weapons will become relevant, the counter hypersonic capability to negate the threat from these weapons, which are becoming more than real in days to come, will become a business case for space industry to develop the surveillance capability, to develop the capability to transport this information to the affecting system. There will be some weapon producers which will produce weapons, whether it is laser or high power microwave or charged particle beam, to battle manage this whole stuff. will become a challenge for the future. I just wanted to give a mirror, give a glimpse of the future through these few slides and build this capability. Yes, you are building offensive capability. I've heard the DRDO scientists say that we have done 3 tests of hypersonic technology demonstration vehicle. All 3 of them have failed. All 3 of them have a big success. Some of them, first one has failed. I mean, you are there. You are in baby steps. But building the capability in counter hypersonic domain is a business case for Space Unit and a great challenge for future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Saxena. You spoke about what the technology has in store for us, but at the moment we are at the receiving end, and I think we are looking at some solutions from the industry. Air Marshal Bedi spoke about the A2AD, and he also mentioned about the national airspace. And then he said beyond that, it is global common. I'm actually looking at the industry to distinguish between what they can do to counter or provide for the challenges which the 2 military officers have just spoken about, because industry has to find solutions. So we have 2 representatives from industry here, Jayant and Naveen. I will then later on come to Tobby, who's a think tank, because then you would have heard the views of the military, you would have heard the views of the industry, and then I'll come to you, what do you think of where the technology has possibilities and where India has opportunities. Having said that, General Bedi had started near space, and we also spoke about the HAPS. Let's see if the industry is looking at how the space and the near space is going to be used in their technology and how close are they to having solutions. So Jayant, I'd like to ask you, what is that you can do in the near space? And obviously you are going to be talking about the lack of human involvement, so it is autonomous. You will also talk about the command and control. You will also talk about your ability to exploit the national airspace and contribute towards the A2AD. Because after all, we don't want any intrusion to happen in the near space. Where General Saxena spoke about the intrusion is possible from the space. But the intrusion is also possible from the near space because the aircrafts cannot defend it. The BMDV spoke about in the morning. So Jayant, can you please throw light on what is there you think the industry can offer and what is there already on the plate?
Can I use that mic?
Please.
Good afternoon all. Now, a very pertinent question has been asked, like under the autonomous system, what solution we can provide. Now, talking about the solution, I will split my solutions into 2 parts. One from the perspective of the unmanned system, what is generally called UAVs, and second is HAPS, that is high altitude pseudo satellites. Now, talking about the unmanned system, UAVs, sometimes we call it drones as well. Now, drones has entered each and every sphere of our life. If I talk about the development of the drones from 2010 onwards, like when drone technology in India was a bit new, and now in 2023, when you talk about the high altitude drones that can operate in the altitude of 4.5 kilometer to 6.5 kilometers. Now, drones initially used to be part of our it was more like a hobby to the students, and now it's a very serious business where you talk about the munition payloads, loitering, dropping, maritime security, even man overboard security for the naval applications. And then I talk about the HAPS, which is high altitude pseudo satellites. Now, if I talk about the near space satellites or near space applications, like if we talk about around 25 to 50 kilometers, we can easily operate the HAPS. Though this HAPS still is a new technology where some part of the demonstration has been done by Airbus Zephyr, I hope you know. and HL is also working on it. So talking about the HAPS, now it has got multiple applications and multiple feasibilities. Like talking about the flexibility of launch. I myself have done course on rocketry and space. So I always used to think why we have to launch the rockets when it is so expensive. Why can't we have a solution where the cost can be reduced a lot? And then now today we are living in an era where technology is so developed that we have got high altitude pseudo satellites. Now, which is bridging the gap between the satellite communication and the aircrafts. Like before me, speaker have already spoken. Like there are some altitudes aircraft cannot go, and there are altitudes where your satellites cannot operate. So HAPS are bridging this gap. Now talking about the flexibility. Now launching a rocket is already a very expensive exercise, and it's a very time consuming as well. And failure in this case means loss of huge revenue. Whereas HAPS are can be operated in an autonomous way. We can develop it in such a way that you can launch it where the launch pad requirement will be hardly 250 meters. And from there it can be taken off to altitude of 25 kilometers, approximately 70,000 feet, and it can operate for months or some days as per your requirement. Now, if you talk about the solution it provides, now it can form the bridge between the unmanned system and the satellite. It can provide the internet to those areas where the proper connectivity, Wi-Fi connectivity is not there. It can form a bridge between the ships which are operating in the seas. So now second thing is, after flexibility, I will call it a commercial aspect. If I talk about the maintenance and application maintenance, now HAPS can be maintained easily. Reason being, we cannot use the satellite. So mostly, if I talk about the bringing back the satellites, is again a very costly affair. So HAPS can be brought back and can be repaired and maintained, and if required, we can add additional features to it and can be flown back. So through this technology, we can easily monitor and we can easily control our expenses. Now talking again about the security purpose, now HAPS, since it is closer to our Earth surface, so it can also provide a good amount of security monitoring over a particular patch of land. So I think talking about the gaps, so this HAPS part can be further developed by the industry, and it can be of great use to our defense forces and also to the communication sector. Another aspect I would like to add regarding the drones. Now these days we are also working on, like we already have kamikaze drones where it will go, hit and explode. Now we are also talking about those drones which can simply drop the payload and come back. Now our technology has improved a lot, our communication system has improved a lot, our cameras. Now if I talk about the cameras and the communication system, now we are quite capable to minutely monitor each and every activity on the border areas even at night. Now our industry is working on few aspects where we are talking about 24-hour surveillance of our borders, and that too through the drones. It will decrease the fatality, loss of human lives, and at the same time we can improve the surveillance capability. So with this, I think I have checked upon some aspects that can be provided by the industry to the defense sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayant. I believe then there is a possibility in HAPS that you're talking about the pseudo satellites, that you can cover a gap where our Earth observation, and we were talking about the ISR yesterday, the kind of ISR which are required in our country is huge. And we were talking about the time of revisit, desirable 10, obtainable 4 to 5 hours, or maybe some 10, 12 hours, and somebody is talking about number of days. It depends on where you are located and what capability you have. Later on, of course, I would want from you, but I understand that you will be able to superimpose and get those pictures which possibly the satellites have missed, or maybe provide better resolution for better targeting. So I assume that, so I will park that thought with you, which I take is what you would agree with me. I'm also looking at, again, drones being connected as far as the satellite communication is concerned. Beyond line of sight, obviously there has to be a capability like HAPS that you continue to fly for a number of days, into months, or maybe even longer. How is it that beyond line of sight communication control and whatever the drones can bring as ISR or even targeting or going to combat? So I will request, I think you have an idea, and that is why you are, idea forge. So Naveen, please tell me, how can you describe the drones be augmenting the space capability and also making sure that the drones are used as teaming with the Air Force, and how the connectivity between the Indian Air Force or the Air Force, space and drones would become relevant into overall synergizing the aerospace operations?
Sure, sir. So, good evening to everybody. I think I'll not dwell upon the technology part of the drones, because this technology has become so ubiquitous, at least in the media and all, that everybody knows what the capabilities are. And in this industry, what we say is that, and we are saying it for last 7-8 years, that we are just touching the tip of the iceberg. Every approximately 3.5 months, a new use case for the drones comes up. And we in the industry also don't know what will happen maybe 3 years down the line. If you can have any other use case, General Pannu spoke, he's asked me to speak about the communication aspects and how we can, and General Saxena spoke about, the MUMT project, how manned-unmanned teaming can happen, and there are, numerous possibilities. What I'll try to do is, see, I'm a business guy. I'm not a technocrat, so I'll not go too much into technology, but where is the business case? Because those people who are sitting over here who are wanting to develop, are into the space technology and trying to make a startup or a technology or a use case which they can sell. Though it was covered much better in the last session where General Sachdeva spoke so well. So, see, what is going to happen is, like, it's, you cannot see the space or the electromagnetic spectrum in silos, right? There is a concept of, if there is an army user, like, sorry, I was not there once, some army, they had a want that every 1 hour there should be a pass. So what does it mean? It means the concept of persistent surveillance. I want my eyes on my potential target as long as possible. It is a given thing, you cannot do it. You cannot do it only through the satellites. You also cannot do it only through the drones. And you also cannot do it only through your sensors on the ground. So what and the topic of this is all, how do you synergize all that? And I'll just throw some thoughts over that, what I think could be done. So it has to be seen as a continuum. And let's take the example, again, maybe just before the pandemic, I was having a lunch with Rahul Chaudhary, the ex-CEO of TASL, Tata SED at that time, and he was telling me, Naveen, if you sell and make something only for the army, आपका blood pressure ही ऊपर होगा defense forces के लिए. So anything that you make, you should also sell to the defense forces. That's the right business case. That's where you will sustain, you will be able to sustain. So having said that, let's look at what Google is doing. So, and I'm taking an example of a civil use case, and I'll come to the military use case also. So what Google is saying, that there is a lot of hoo-halla about, drones being used in agriculture, in India, a lot of spray drones and all. That's a different day, we can talk of that. It does not, it has its utility. But what crop monitoring? Imagine a year back, before, just at the time of, the Ukraine war was starting, and in India, a lot of wheat exports were happening. and there were long spells of bad weather for the wheat crop. And there was a lot of, and Indian government had to put a ban on the export of wheat. Why did that happen? Because we were not able to estimate very effectively how much our crop has been affected by these rains. I'm talking about last year. So what Google is doing is, you can look at the crop patterns right from the space through a satellite using A, B, C, 3 different hyperspectral or any sensor, and you can estimate how good or bad the crop over a huge area, over a complete country or a continent. You can do that, of course, in bits and pieces. But then the sensors which are over there, they do not correlate so well with the conditions on the ground because there are some technological limitations. So the example I was giving, and this is a POC happening in Israel right now, what they are doing is, you can sense the quality of the crops much better from a much lower height, say 100, 200 meter. And that's where drones come in, right? So with the drones, you use a hyperspectral camera or some other sensor, and you map the whole field, and you come to know how good or bad the pattern of the crop is. Incidentally, there is a POC happening in California. There's a POC happening in California for how good the sugar content in the grapes is, which is going to their wineries, right? So coming to that, so what Google is doing, they are mapping the whole. I think it's I don't know how many square kilometers. They are mapping it through a drone, through a hyperspectral, through a specialized sensor, and look where the integration is happening. What Google is wanting to do, I will get a data set from the much more granular data set from a drone of the crop pattern, and now I'm going to correlate it with the satellite data. So what they're going to do is, they're going to get a huge billion bytes of data set, and then they're going to find that delta, that what I see from my satellite, actually on the ground where a drone performs much better, what is the delta? And then after that, it's a pure data science. After that, it's a pure data science. You cannot keep flying a drone every single day to monitor the crop. But if he is able to get that algorithm right, and that's what they are doing, this POC is happening right now, that's how they will. After that, it's a satellite which has been placed in the near orbit or the higher altitude. It's only about getting that integration. Now, where does the military use case comes over there, which some of us we are sitting here for? Imagine, imagine a scenario that you want to estimate how much of ground forces of the enemy are in a desert. How would you do that? You look at satellite imagery, people do camouflage, you are not able to make out. Maybe if you run a drone flight over that 5-10 times, you can gather something more. But what is the need of the hour is, how do you integrate all this information? How do you integrate? And that's where the problem is. This drone industry, I'm from the drone industry, so I'll say, we are suffering from looking at the drone applications in silos. Somebody is making for 50 kilometers, somebody is making for 10 kilometers, somebody is making for 300, hail, mail, and so on and so forth. Nobody is thinking of it as a system. And that's what I think, Jan Sachdeva, you also said, this industry don't do that from the procurement perspective. And I'll come to that briefly. Also. That don't look at creating a solution just for the space. The future is for systems. And for that, what is required is, what Colonel Kuber and the gentleman from PwC who was there, you require a whole ecosystem where somebody acts like a MSI. The industry will make a solution for the space, somebody will make for the near space, we will make for the drones, somebody will make for some more sensor on the ground, but you require an integration of all that. And who's best to do that? It has to be a MSI. And that's where we come back now to the last session, of procurement. Now, if you are going to just go and present, I have this capability of my satellite and all, somebody might, bite the bullet, somebody may not. And that's where, we are talking about a vision of 2030, 2035 for the space. However, we need to bring in, look at the whole airspace, you know, that one cylinder from ground up to maybe 70, 80, 90 kilometers and integrate all that information together. And for that, we have to, the industry, individual industry, see, I have made a drone. So I'll go tom-tom all over the countryside, see my drone can do this, my drone can do that. Somebody has made a satellite, he will do that. Somebody has made a HAPS, he will do that. But everybody is again myopic, they are working in silos. The integration is what is important. And after that, and there is a huge business case over there. Some smart kids sitting over here, this already the geospatial data is going to put, the new geospatial policy in India has come in, it's going to be available online. You pay a small fee and you will get the data. The person, the smartest guy would be who would be looking at this metadata from the satellites, from the geospatial, maybe some drone service will come up, and who will extract the information and create a business case out of that. That's where probably the future is. So, how do we, abhi zarurat hai ki wo Indian Army and Armed Forces should buy it also. And that's where, you know, the truth of the pudding is, and there is a wrong perception. And I don't agree with you, General Sachdeva, if you say that people are, you know, they are afraid of the DAP or so. I may have also cursed this DAP provisions, you know, more than once. But the fact is, today the government and the hierarchy is ready to take a bet. But we as an industry don't necessarily need to go to them, sir, this is the problem I have. Please come up with 3 solutions also, right? Suggest a solution. SPV has to be created. And that's where the MSIs, the Master System Integrators, and the consultants and the Big Fours come in to make a cogent pitch to the government. The normal DAP procedure, at least for the satellites, and if you are talking about this big time integration, our procurement process is not right now. Let's not talk about Make 1 at least. Make 2, thoda chala hai, lekin Make 1, I think L&T has got the first for making a light tank or so. How many years it will take? I'll lose rest of my hair. Tab tak to mushkil lag raha hai. I really don't know. So let's go as an industry. We have to go with. I know. Am I shooting the time, sir? Half a minute more? Okay, I will do that. So at the end of the day, I think let me conclude. There is a method in this madness. Let's not get too much bogged down by this DAP. The higher hierarchy is ready to take calls. It's maybe the middle hierarchy is a little, you know, we get stuck in the process. But you come up with a solution. And that's where the whole industry, the think tanks, the Big Fours, everybody has to come together and and then at the policy level also. So having said that, I think I'll conclude. Airtel ki ad hai na ki har koi friend zaruri hota hai. So ground sensors, near space, usse pehle niche drones, the near space and then HAPS and whatever, everything needs to be, you know, integrated, and we better start thinking right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen. You spoke about a couple of things, but what I take away from you is that you spoke about integration. And I think when you talk about the drones and the communication and the capability of the drones in the larger domain, what the space can do, drones can do, also in a way that you can count on drones to do a whole lot of host of activities. But also, I suppose, Air Marshal Rajiv Sachdeva also ended at a positive note when he spoke about the ICAD. He gave the background to it, but I suppose the future, he said, is ICAD, which is in play. Having said that, as I understand, the drone and the HAPS and the A2AD as a concern, the future threat which is coming up from the hypersonics. But so I find that this particular session was extremely important, where we are not talking about space, we are talking about aerospace now in true sense. So it is then not the SATCOM Industries Association, it is Aerospace Industries Association, which is Asia. Because if all this has to be put into it, then you cannot have only the space, you have to do aerospace. And I suppose that is exactly what we are doing. So since, Tobby, we've come to aerospace, technology, threats, and the solutions given by the industry, please tell us, what do you think future technologies are available to stitch all that we have spoken about together, and how is it that the technology challenges, the technology availability can be stitched for a better system stitching, and where Air Marshal Sachdeva says, hey, this is exactly what is required. Lay it out and put it in the ICAD.
Good evening. I think the best bullets have been fired. There is a certain fatigue now, and I am the last man standing. So I'll be very brief. We are already 10 minutes past 5. I'll just make some remarks, and try to set a context in about 3.5, 4 minutes. The first will be that the HAPS system will likely be the driver for all future AI computing in aerial and space activities, as HAPS systems can constitute an aerial data center and perform edge computing quite well. Due to higher altitude and wide coverage, HAPS can collect massive volumes of data. Now, what is the advantage? Such data can be used to reveal trends, hidden patterns, unseen correlations, and help them in automated decision making. Number 3, I believe military leadership must definitely invest in these technologies, because the resources can primarily come from the saving, as transactions of this will lead to lower cost in the space architecture. Leveraging privately funded sources, commercially developed lower services, satellite in satellite sensors and ground infrastructure. So there will be a definite lowering of cost, and actually organizations, governments can take if you move quickly to this space architecture. Now, why is this possible? Let's say, why is HAPS, which in the past people thought was not conceivable, why is it becoming more real? I think the first reason is the sort of maturing technologies and the availability of new composite lightweight material. And number 2, it is miniaturizing of avionics. And number 3, it's high performance solar cells, which give a lot of resilience. Number 5 is lightweight batteries. This basically gives 24/7 output, especially if it is hydrogen. And miniaturization of earth sensors, high-speed bandwidth at affordable cost. Now, let me try to also briefly speak on the drones factor. Drone operators preferably need an online processing and analysis of huge tranches of survey data captured by drones. By online data processing, the operators can retry this thing and to make sure that they are not making any significant mistakes. What is the future? And I look at it in 4 ways. One, there will be we should definitely make a distinction between general AI and the narrow computer-based AI. The general AI will come into play when more singularity happens, and that was earlier thought to be about 240. I think singularity might happen in as early as 235, when there is going to be a possibility that the intelligence of the computer, intelligence of what the computer processing can do, might be higher than the human level. The second one will be, I would like to look at human enhancement technologies like cybernetics. The cybernetics play a clear role, because those who are cybernetically enhanced individuals could remotely operate UAVs or weapon systems without the need of a joystick. So it's all implanted here. It looks fiction now, but you never know. I think in another 10 years, 15 years, we might be facing cybernetically empowered people. That could change a lot of battlefield tactics, and that is why we really need to make sure that the AI is fully being able to automate, and that it can take independent decisions. Finally, IoTs will be used to optimize processes because these IoTs come at lower cost and will be able to create new business models for most of the people who wanting based on more data analytics, machine technology, and key AI tools. So this would be where I think the future would be, and I will conclude by saying that finally in the contest between people, those who seek to hide and those who seek to detect and eliminate, it is more possible that in the coming future, the people who are going to detect and eliminate will have an edge. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobby. You spoke about how the future can actually be automated to save time and how human is going to be augmented with technology. Not only how we operate today, but I suppose from wearables to implants, and that is how the man-machine teaming is going to happen. Since Mandeep has not made any tactical move, I suppose we have time for one or two questions. Okay, so I have two hands and two questions. Extreme right? Yes, please go.
Thank you so much, panel. My name is Harini. I'm a PhD scholar. I was just thinking, since we're having this conversation, what is the expectations from the defense industry, or what are the capabilities by the industry on missile early warning systems based through satellite technologies? I feel like this conversation could also address missile early warning as a
You have a question for somebody by name, or
no, sir, it's an open question.
it is for the industry or anybody?
So, what are the expectations of the Indian defense forces? I mean, Indian defense for missile early warnings.
Okay, General Saxena would like to.
That's a very pertinent question regarding the missile early warning, because missile early warning, the concept of early warning itself is changing. Gone are the days when early warning restricted to detecting a ballistic missile either from the launch or the boost phase or the mid-course or the terminal phase. Today, the expectations of the defense community in the future regime. Okay, the missile early warning, if you talk of S-400, it has got long-range surveillance radars having a range of 1,850 kilometers. And the missile, all functional radar, all. Similarly, any type of early warning radar which can detect conventional missiles is no big game. It's already realized, we already have systems. What is there for the future and what is there for the challenge is to detect systems or to detect those threat vehicles which are traveling so fast that they do not give time for the radar systems to operate. Or secondly, or more importantly, they are covered with the sheath of plasma which blocks the radar waves and do not let it be detected. That means speed is the new stealth, that is one. Second is by virtue of its being covered with a sheath of plasma is not letting you detect. And third, of course, is maneuverability, which means that the target from its present position to the expected future position does not follow a fixed path or a predictable path. That is the game of maneuverability. So as the general just brought out, I think Naveen brought out about the OPIR system, overhead persistent infrared detectors. Why infrared? Because going through at this speed, as somebody had just brought out, creates a temperature ranges of 3000 to 5000 degree Fahrenheit. That is the type of temperature. People are putting their heads together how to build materials to sustain that. But for radars, it is a big boon. It's a big boon. If you say the RISAT series of satellite from ISRO will be a game, no, they will not be a game. Because the radar-based satellites, you may have any amount of resolution, it does not go through. You say GSAT will be a big solution, which is optical solution. No, because the type of persistence which they give you, type of time of exposure will give you very small. What is it? It is to develop that sort of a early warning, which is for the future course of early warning of missiles which are hypersonic in nature. That is what I was trying to bring out in my presentation.
Thank you, General Saxena. I find as we go closer to end, more hands have come up. I think which was the original second hand? Yeah, please go ahead.
Good evening and thank you for the opportunity. I'm Ritin Raj. I'm a first year aerospace student. So my question to the panel is that, like, in the developing era, soon India will be witnessing Industry 5.0 as well as 6.0, in which mostly everything will be AI based or artificial intelligence based. So as Tommy sir spoke about modernization and the augmented, virtual connecting to our defense systems. So what specific role will AI play in our defense system, more specifically defense aerospace system, so that we can tackle the current problems? Also, being a first year student, what do you expect from us so that we can solve the problems while after getting into a career?
I'm going to take more questions because ultimately I think you have to find a solution to whatever is going to be said, because you are studying this. Yeah, so I'm going to ask both of you, one after the other, shoot your question, because then we will take all these questions together. Yep. Whoever. It's one bouquet of questions.
Thank you, panel. My name is Ameya Kelkar from the Center for Land Warfare Studies. My question is, sir, as Mr. Simon had brought out in his speech that increasing technology will mean AI and automation will also become part of our military infrastructure, including our, of course, into our warfighting capabilities. My question is to the entire panel, sir, to what extent will the lessening role of the human in our future warfighting strategies, how will that impact our, how should I say, the creation of any future doctrines or the creation of any future strategies in our military capabilities? That's my main question. So
that question, he said, he can help you. He's studying aerospace. But then, well, that is in the lighter vein. Yeah, let's have the third question.
Sir, I have a two-point question. One is directly that as we are moving towards HAPS and LEOs, are we in a way trying to make a point that we are phasing out GEOs in the near future? That is question number one. Question number two is that it is slightly anti-thematic of the conference that in a way we are trying to, motivate the private industry, but do we have to put some checkpoints for the industry where the industry becomes so powerful, a few corporations more powerful than the countries, that they can fund both sides of the battle, and they don't have much at the vulnerability. So these are the two questions. This is not related directly to this session. It was more like the doctrines which we had yesterday. But is this the right time? We have to put some checks and balances in our doctrine that corporations getting so powerful that we have to be careful.
The last question I'll answer, the regulator and the administrator loves people like you. He will say, just close everything because I will not allow you to grow. So, but I think another forum, you would have been given an honorary PhD because they're looking for PhDs like that. So I will have the two questions being answered by Air Marshal Bedi, I suppose, and Tobby, because I think you posed a teaser there, but you can answer that.
No, just the aerospace part. Like specifically, you said how will AI help in defense or aerospace things? Aerospace defense. Yeah. So see, AI, as I see, there is going to be problem of what OODA loop, what we call. That decision taking has to be very fast. Now, like hypersonic technology, you have seen. Erstwhile war battlefield, if a target at let's say 500 kilometers was attacked in 10 minutes instead of 3 minutes, nothing much would have changed. But now when we are talking of very fast technologies, that 7 minutes will be hell of a long time. So you need quick, fast decision making, because for which the quick data has to be analyzed. If I'm told tomorrow million images are available, of the satellites, or various data are available, then it is going to become difficult to manually analyze all those images and reach a quick decision. That is where AI will come. Now, problem with AI we have all heard is that how much will you trust? And somebody said that the biggest challenge to technology is realism. That is the real people, because I only pose a question to AI and then I am skeptical about it. Is it telling me the right thing or not? Why problem occurs is because, like, what is backing me in taking decision is experience. Experience I gained over 30-40 years is my training. What is the training for AI? Training for AI is data. So tomorrow if I am more confident of my training the AI, because the right kind of data has to be fed in. Just a 5 seconds anecdote. They say, what is AI? If a computer, I say, was asked, I have a choice between two watches, one is permanently stopped, one loses 1 second in a day, which one should I buy? A guy without AI will tell you buy which is permanently stopped, because it gives you correct time twice a day. Other one will give you once in 236 years by simple LCM mathematics. So this computer needs training in life science, that how does time management work in real life? Only then will he give you the correct solution. So all this training has to be fed into the AI system, and moment I am confident of my training. I have been an instructor, I have trained guys to fly aeroplanes who didn't even know how to ride a scooter. Okay, so when do I launch him solo? I launch him solo moment I am confident of my training, that I have trained him enough. Now he will take the plane and bring it back. I think a similar trend will follow in AI. Thank you. Yes, please.
It will be very intriguing. Put this question to ChatGPT. What the answer comes out. It will be intriguing.
Okay, I would like to add to your first another question. Like, you are a first year student of aerospace engineering. I have all my degrees, BTech, MTech, PhD in aerospace engineering. So and I've also served as a professor of aerospace engineering. So I would say, as a student of aerospace engineering, you must study properly. That's a very important answer. Okay? You must have grip of all your concepts, aerodynamics, propulsion, structures. I have seen many students running away from structures and material science. Please study it properly, because without structural analysis and understanding of structure, you cannot design anything. If you design, it may fail structurally. Okay, so I would like to add one more thing. Since you are talking about AI, study our swarming technology. Yes, it is the classic example of AI. You know swarming? When a cluster of drones are flying together. Okay, so you must study that. You will get your answer. Thank you.
Tobby? Okay, so, okay, I can't stop a young lady in a suit.
So my name is Retd. I'm from Tech Aerospace.
Get a mic, please. Get a mic, please.
Good evening, sir. I'm Riddhi Malhotra. I'm currently pursuing Tech Aerospace from 3rd year. I'm from LPU. So my doubt is that, like, what are the strategic implications that Indian defense faces when it comes to privatization of military projects?
Are you saying that when you make a private industrial or defense industrial complex, which is highly
So
privatized,
when private industries are given some kind of military projects, like Dr. Rajiv Sachdeva told us that some of the projects are completely given to DRDO, and now lists have been made that these projects will be transferred to private industries. So what are the strategic implications of these projects?
are you fearing something? You see, after all, there must be a question which came out of some apprehension that you have in your mind.
No,
What
no,
was the
sir.
basis of asking this question? Because, it's a very good question, but
Right,
you
sir.
must have had some inkling that there is something going to go wrong, so I'll ask this question.
No, sir, nothing wrong. I just had this curiosity. Like, why privatization can't take place in an easier manner for the defense? Like civilian involvement in defense.
Okay, so is there anybody, yeah, make an attempt because it's interesting and I don't have an answer because we are all trying to achieve this, but I suppose, yeah.
So I think I'll club your question with somebody who said if the, we hear of all those conspiracy theories in US that military complex is, fueling these wars, right? So to answer his question first, see the fact is every industry or economy, it goes through a growth phase, right? For us, it'll be I'm from the industry, I'll say आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर, कभी ऐसा भी हो, लेकिन अभी we are way off that. And at the end of the day, see the fact is if you have the right regulators and the government and the policies, we'll not dwell into what is happening in X country, right? At the end of the day, somebody has to buy if the industry is making. I know world is not black and white, it's a shades of grey, but one, we are way off that. It's a, there are some very small green shoots which have come in, and people like us or, some other industry members who are growing. And well, if you look at CNBC, if you follow the shares and all, so yeah, aerospace and defense is what a lot of people are talking about. Fintech, aerospace, agriculture, and something to do with medicine tech, med tech. So we are way off. Abhi time hai, and at the end of the day, see, on top of that is the legislator. If you are able to legislate properly, if you are able to regulate properly, those issues should not happen. But then again, the world is grey, right? And if I may attempt to, answer your question, what are the challenges? See, the fact is, in the last session, we were talking about, let's not take example of China only, but military or defense use case or industry, they're for the nation, right? And why restrict our R&D or the development only to the government? See, we all are affected, right? If our economy doesn't do well, this military industry or defense aerospace industry will also not flourish, right? Let it be a synergistic. So there are some pitfalls in everything, right? While they say ki you should have only organic food, that also may have some pitfalls. So what you are alluding to, yes, there are some pitfalls. There can be pitfalls, and he asked that question also. But at the end of the day, why do we? I want to maximize my chances of success, whether in terms of a technology or an industry or a capability development. And there we had this example of China. How everything is intertwined. I'm not saying that's the right model, but the fact is to compartmentalize R&D, and thoughts can never be compartmentalized, right? That only DRDO can think of a solution or only industry can think of a solution. It has to be, a synergistic effort, and the regulatory framework, and I think the business dynamics also, they have a they have a habit of finding the right equilibrium. So have I been able to answer? I hope I have.
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
I will just, lead on to something which I will request you to then conclude. You see, business and war, these are two words. Some people have war fighting as the business, and some people make business out of war. And I think here, two types of people are sitting who want to make business out of war and who have war fighting as the business. At the end of it, when you talk about Atmanirbharta, indigenization, supply chain infection, we will not buy, we will not get technology. Some people are denying you technology, and some people you don't want to get technology from because they will infect your systems as we get smarter. So I think checks and balances in technology, the testing, your own industry, your own control, chip manufacturing. Unless you don't manufacture chips here, obviously you're going to suspect chips which come from outside. So I think the key lies in developing your indigenous systems, homegrown, and that is why somewhere we're talking about the IC content, of course, which becomes laughable because the way we think about it becomes laughable, and it is not practical. But I suppose there is some seriousness in making sure that we We are fighting the Indian wars with Indian solutions. I think that is what is more important. Air Marshal Sachdeva.
If your question...
Oh, you're still being talked about. Okay.
If your question was simple and not complicated the way the chair has understood, then I'll just tell you, like the DRDO rep in the previous session mentioned, that 108 innovations which the DRDO was doing, they've handed over to the industry. Okay, you do it. Fine. There is another thing which the Ministry of Defence has started, known as IDEX, Innovations for Defence Excellence. In that, the Army, Navy and Air Force is throwing a challenge to the MSMEs. That means private industry. They're throwing a challenge. हमें ये चाहिए बना के दिखा सकते हो? Can you make a mic which is half the weight of this? Okay, now the industry comes up with that challenge and there's a competition held amongst them. Whoever wins that competition gets 2 crore rupees to go ahead and start manufacturing it. So you are integrated with the system like this. So what are the challenges? Almost about 75 to 100 challenges as of now the industry is making, and I think Air Force has picked up 15 of them. Those challenges. So if your question was that simple, then this is the answer. You are integrated through DRDO, because DRDO has a 70-year of experience. So we can't let that experience switch off and switch you on. So through them, there is an industry which is being looked after, and the Ministry of Defence is also looking after the industry. So don't worry. If your question was that simple, if your question was that complicated, then the answer has come from there.
You are still on the same, or
30 seconds, sir.
Okay.
A young mind having this hesitation clearly shows that as an industry, as a regulator, as a services, 2020 in the year 2023, a young mind student, the future of our nation, conveying this hesitation should be our motivation to integrate and do the things as fast as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Amandeep. Also, you are younger than me. I think you have thought better than what I would have said. So thank you very much. Whenever we do a program like this, and General Khandare has been talking about how to integrate the young minds, he's been also saying, we've been speaking about it to get more students here. And what's your name? Huh? Riddhi Malhotra. I think we want more Riddhi Malhotras in our next program. I think we need young minds to come and debate, question, and maybe sometimes come and give us out of box, because I think we are quite boxed in. And I think there's a great lesson that you have given here, is that we will get more young minds, and we will make sure that we have special vacancies for the young minds to come in. Thank you very much for this.
I think perhaps we can have an entire session dedicated only to students grilling you all. So before we close the session, taking concurrence of Air Marshal Bedi's reference to weddings in near space in a balloon, I would request you all to please save the date, wedding style, for Indian Space Congress 2023, happening on the 12th of July till the 14th of July. So 12th to the 14th of July, please save the date. No, it says 12th to 14th. Okay. नहीं बिल्कुल सही हुआ है. So I think I stand corrected. It's from 10th till the 12th of July. It's happening in New Delhi. So please save the date. And now may I ask the esteemed Chair, Lieutenant General PGS Pannu, to kindly do us the honors of presenting mementos to the esteemed speakers as a token of our appreciation and thanks. We thank Air Marshal G.S. Bedi, AVSM, VM, VSM, retired, former DGIS. Thank you for your presence here today.
And I'm also presenting my book to the panel that have been with me.
And there is this book which is going out to each and every panelist. This has been co-authored by General Pannu along with Mr. Rohit Malhotra. We thank Lieutenant General Dr. V.K. Saxena, PVSM, AVSM, VSM retired, formerly Director General of the Corps of Army Air Defense. It's been a pleasure to have you here in our midst, sir. Our thanks to Mr. Naveen Navlani. Our thanks to Mr. Jayant Sinha. And a very special thanks, of course, going out to Mr. Tobby Simon for being a part of this session. And the esteemed chair for having chaired this session and taken us through this enthralling discussion.
So we also actually went in on a platform, we discussed this book. So Tobby, did you have a copy?
May I request you all for a photo op before we request you all to please take your seats back in the audience. And with that, we're moving on to